The people have spoken.
Austin Riley, who's, he's not playing anymore, but when he was, 1.8, still at 128 strikeouts. That was months ago.
And we're back for another season to deliver.
From a fantasy perspective for next year, he's going to be a top 3 shortstop again. Probably, second round. I think a mid-second round is about where he should go.
Have your drink ready.
Then you hold off, wait, and you hope that Perdomo's there for you in the 5th or 6th. But if he's not, then your entire strategy just shit to bed.
And prepare to be entertained.
Guys like Riley Green, Spencer Torkelson, those guys need to also perform. Gary Carpenter, in the heat of the moment. And those guys, all 3 of those guys I just listed, are all streaky guys.
Welcome to another season of Bourbon N Ball.
I'm Doug, Mikey V from Clearwater, Florida over there. Finish your drink, go to bed. It's Friday night. Have fun, guys. Take care.
The station where our veterans' voices are heard. MBR Talk.
Hey, thanks for supporting our channel by watching and listening.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
It's a whole new...
Wow! What an intro, man! Start off with the new year, right? For Bourbon N Ball, season 3. I know, it's wild, it's wild. Mikey D, what's going on, man?
My brother, oh my God, you're bringing the heat with that intro.
Right. So I redid our intro. And then NPR itself, H and a couple other people put together this whole AI song of Bourbon N Ball. And that's where the Bourbon N Ball song, the intro, came from.
So that's an AI song?
That's an AI song, believe it or not.
Wow. We're living in a whole new era, huh? Oh my God.
Wild times, man. Wild times. So, yes, Bourbon N Ball, season 3, starting the year, man, 2026. I hope everybody had a happy, safe, healthy New Year, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. We're done. Everything's done now. We're full gear. Spring training coming up. Next exit, getting ready to take it. Bourbon N Ball. I'm Doug. I'm from Foxborough. My lifelong friend over there, Mikey V, coming to you from Clearwater, Florida. This is Bourbon N Ball. We are coming for you from MBR Radio. You can catch us on Patriot Radio as well. Again, a lot of military affiliation with those. So for me, I was a paratrooper for over 6 years. I have jumps in Ireland, Germany, the Netherlands, and a combat tour in Afghanistan in 2011 and 2012.
Yeah, my father was part of the Vietnam War. He was drafted, went into the Air Force, spent a few years doing that. And then my grandfather was a paramedic during World War II. So a lot of connections over there too as well, Doug.
Awesome. So this is Bourbon N Ball again for the 5th time. I think I've said that. And of course, the big question is, well, why bourbon? Why ball? Well, this is our 3rd season. I got to say, our first one was a little shaky. We built off every season. Last season, we had a Bourbon N Ball League, which was awesome. Ron came in 2nd. I won, which is nice. But he did get some nice Bourbon N Ball bourbon glasses, which I am drinking from tonight, obviously.
Looking good over there, Doug.
So we've been doing fantasy baseball now for about 20 years, right? Actually, this will mark over 20 years at this point. We've been in an ESPN points league head-to-head, and a lot the numbers we do give you are from a points perspective, but as we always say, if you're a top 10, top 15 hitter or contributor in a points league, then chances are you're the same in a Roto Cats league. I don't think it matters at that point. I think you start splitting hairs once you get outside the top 25, top 30, right? So we have that. We've been doing that for over 20 years. And then we figured, well, why not just, start a show and drink some bourbon while we do it and have a good time and just spit out facts. We're not here to berate you on a trade that you think, some people might think you got screwed on. We're here to just give you the facts. And if you like your guy, as Mikey V always says, if you like your guy, go out and you get him. That's it. Simple, right?
On my 10 commandments, Doug.
So we got a little bit to talk about. We got a lot to assume based off the free agents, which we'll talk about later on, because I have a couple assumptions myself about bigger ones.
You got some conspiracy theories going on over there? Putting on the tinfoil hat?
Just wants to start the show with those, but it's so good. I kind of just want to wait because it's like, you know what I mean? It's good. But we can still start off the show with some big signings, some trades, some teams that we thought wouldn't have a lick to get some players that they got, a couple bottom dwellers, last place teams that ended up going out and making some big moves, which is awesome. So before we start with some of those smaller teams, let's start out with a pretty big team. I think this is probably one of the bigger signings, in my opinion, for a team that kind of lost out on their player. And here he is, Jorge Polanco, right? I mean, he's a great second baseman. You could probably move him to third. I mean, he was a cog in that Mariners lineup for years. Serviceable. His numbers aren't like amazing, right? I mean, they signed him for 2 years, $40 million. I think it's a great sign. I think based off of what I'm reading, he could play first, he could play second, he could play third. So there's a lot of options for him, right? His numbers actually not too bad. 265, 26 homers for a second baseman, 78 ribbies, 64 runs, 82 strikeouts, 6 stolen bases, 341 points, or 2.5 a start. Those are pretty good. Those are pretty good numbers. 2.5 a start. That's really good. I'm not sure where he'll play. Like I said, some people say he might slide into first because Pete Alonso's now gone, right? Some people say he might slide into second because you got Beatty, who might, be traded or become a bench bat. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think he goes to third and then you try to get a big bat to fill first base with. He's not your stereotypical first base person. He doesn't scare me at all, but it would be a huge upgrade offensively if he does go to third. That was a position they struggled with production-wise last year, So it'll be interesting to see where they go and what they do with him. But I think having somebody that can play all these positions does make it easier to go out and sign other people. If you do go out and, let's just say, hey, you get a Bregman. He could play third. Then you move Polanco to second or first, or you get a Bo Bichette, and Bo Bichette can play third or second, and Polanco can play third. You know what I mean? So you can kind of just tinker with the lineups when you have a player like that. I think it's a great sign. I think, obviously people are sweating over the Pete Alonso thing, but you look at the second half of last year, Pete Alonso wasn't good. He wasn't. And I honestly, I don't mind them being like, hey, listen, this is our offer. If you don't like it, take it or leave. And he left. Whatever. Good. I honestly, I don't think he's going to be any better. He's older. He's in a lineup that doesn't have a Juan Soto anymore. Like, it's going to be tough to see how he's going to produce in the Baltimore Orioles lineup. But in any case, I think this is a great 1B to that 1A loss. And I don't think they're done yet.
Yeah, it's a versatile sign. I think it's a pretty good creative substitute for Alonso, like you said. I think he is going to start at first base just because you brought in Marcus Semien. You still got Lindor at short. I think Matt Vientos is probably going to man that corner from here on out. I think he had a pretty decent season last year to bounce back on. So, I mean, in 26 home runs in the Dogs, nothing to sniff at, That's not bad. And also the 265 average coming up, and with only 82 strikeouts, I think is kind of more of a contact guy, which I think they need in that lineup. They already got the juice in like a Juan Soto, who I think underperformed power-wise, but still can get you 40 home runs a season. I still feel like Lindor still gets you 30 home runs consistently. So I think the versatile defensively is really good. And then also just the bat in general, I think is more well-rounded. And maybe it's not as sexy as Alonso, but it's not a bad replacement. It's a major league hitter. How he does in New York, we'll see how it all pans out. But I think from a fantasy perspective, this might put him in the top 5 for a second base. It's a very thin position. And when you look at who you have out there now, you got guys that are aging like an Altuve. Even though he had a pretty good season last year for what we thought he was going into it last year before last year's draft. But I think Polanco could do some really good damage in this Mets lineup if you could bring that carry over those numbers. And Seattle's not an easy place to hit. So he might get even more power with playing more games in New York.
So it's funny. So you talk about the lineups. Let's take a look and see what a projected lineup is going to look like for them. So here they are. They're 1 through 9 hitters. You got obviously this is all up to you can play around with this, but and for the most part, I don't think I think I would flip Simeon and Lindor. I think Simeon's more of a leadoff guy. Lindor's your second. Then you go Juan Soto. Then you go, like you said, Mark Venantos, who they got DH, and McNeil, Polanco, Alvarez, Beatty, Taylor. I mean, it's not a bad lineup. You get to the bottom third, like any lineup, it starts to kind of deteriorate a little bit. But the top 4, 5 hitters, I mean, that you can't argue. If Simeon bounces back, which I think he might, I really do. I think Texas lineup didn't have anybody. You can make the case there was no protection. Corey Seager, I mean, four IL stints at least last year, right? So he was supposed to be the guy in that lineup. This takes pressure off him, right? Because he doesn't have to produce as much as he used to in Texas. So now you got him. Now you got Lindor. Now you got Juan Soto, and now you add in Polanco, McNeil, and I mean I think it's a great lineup. I honestly I think everybody should. From a fantasy perspective, I would probably own like four of those players. You give me Polanco, you give me Soto, you give me Simeon, you give me Lindor. Lindor's probably a top 2, top 3 shortstop. Soto's obviously a top 4, top 3 player overall. And then like you said, Polanco, he's gonna have first and second base eligible if he does play. That's huge. I mean, that'll really help you out, especially if you have like a first, third, combination extra spot in your lineup. You kind of pick him up, slide him in. He's not going to hurt you in points league with the strikeouts, but it's a good lineup. It really is.
It's so good that if I had to fill a gap in it, it would be an outfielder. And man, what a Kyle Tucker would be such a good fit in that lineup. Just saying. I'm not a big Met guy, obviously, coming from Boston. But man, does that just make sense? If they really want to go over the top, that is a pretty solid lineup. But man, to put him over the top, putting Tucker in that outfield would be something, I think.
So here was my thing about Tucker. I was going to save this till the end, but you brought him up. All right. Kyle Tucker is a quintessential 2-hole hitter. He is a 5-tool guy. He has power. He has stolen bases. He checks every box, right? 280, 290 average. But he's not the guy. And I think for Kyle Tucker to succeed, not just in fantasy, but in baseball, to produce, he needs a 40-homer guy behind him. He needs a protection. You look at his history with Houston. He had Yordan Alvarez. You look at when he went to Chicago. Chicago didn't really have anybody. They didn't have a power hitter. You can make the case Seiya Suzuki, but I mean, come on. Is Seiya Suzuki really like a 40? You know what I mean? He's not the guy. When I look at a Kyle Tucker, to me, and we'll talk about it. We'll touch base with him again later on, but he's got 2 options, right? He can go to the Dodgers, sign a little prove-it deal because he didn't have the best year last year, or he can sign and I think go with Toronto. If I'm him, I like Toronto. I think you'll be batting in front of that 40-homer guy in Vlad for sure. You got your 2 to 3 guys right there. That's perfect. That's a great situation for him. If he moves over and he signs with the Dodgers, like, where's he going to bat? Ohtani's going to go lead off. Was Mookie? You're going to move Mookie out? Mookie's not a 3-hole hitter, right? And you got Freddie in third. You got Teoscar in fourth, which I like. I mean, Teoscar's a power guy. You want a power guy hitting, fourth, third or fourth. So, and then you got Will Smith. So it just doesn't make sense from a lineup perspective that he goes to the Dodgers. It makes sense with Toronto because they have the stuff. They have the hole that he can fill and I think succeed. And I think he's a two-hole hitter. He's not the guy. He needs to be surrounded by the guy. He's still a great player, but I think we seen last year when there isn't the guy in that lineup and he's the guy, he's just not up to where he could be. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's a fair assessment, and it's almost like I think he wants a long-term contract, and I know we kind of went back and forth a little bit, and you think he might not get that, but I almost feel like if he does want that long-term contract, I feel like the Dodgers are almost priced out. But hear me out on this, because you don't want to pay a guy $400 million just to be the number 3 guy, the number 4 guy, the number 5 guy. I think that's overshooting. But if, like you said, if you're in Toronto, that's got a Vlad Guerrero Jr., MVP candidate all year, every year, and then insert him as like your number 2 guy, you can justify that contract a little bit more. So I think that's where it is. I think the Dodgers say, hey, if we can get you for a 2-year deal, we'll be more than happy to take you, and we'll still pay you AAV, X amount, whatever it is. But if he's looking for like that 5, 6, 7-year contract, or even, God forbid, 8, 9, kind of like what Bogart's got, I don't know. I don't think the Dodgers are going to go for that right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't think he's a $300 million player either. I think that's too much for him because he's not the guy. But like I said, though, and I totally agree. I mean, this is probably the conundrum he's having right now. Do I go sign a 2-year deal or maybe a 3-year deal with opt-outs after every year? That kind of makes sense for me if I'm him, right?
Yeah.
Or do I sign the long term with Toronto? But if I go to the Dodgers, is that the right fit? Like, am I going to be able to put up the numbers that'll help me opt out and get the bigger contract? Because he's 28, he's 29. I mean, this is the prime. The more years he waits, the more years are going to be coming off that long-term deal. So I think it's something he's got to figure out because I don't see how he would fit in that lineup. Not to say it's not a great fit for him to be. Everybody wants to be in that lineup, but it's just where are you going to bat him? Because you got so much talent in the top of that order. Where's he going to go?
They got so much talent, and I think there was a poll today that most executives believe that the Dodgers have number 1 farm organization as well. Yeah. So that it's just like what a 1-2 punch they already got going on. That they can do this thing for 10 years, Doug. They could be in the hunt every year for the next decade. I feel with just the ammo that they got already, with already what they have. Adding Tucker to it would just I feel like throwing a coin in the pond a bit.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know. I just it's not the fit for him. I don't think so. I mean, I'd like to hopefully see him sign with the Blue Jays. I think that makes sense for him.
Do you think New York? Would you think the Mets right here?
See, it's like the same kind of situation though. It's like, okay, so who's the odd man out in the top of the lineup? You're going to go Lindor, Tucker, Soto. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's amazing, So then you're going to move Simeon that low, and you're going to go Simeon and maybe move Polanco down. I mean, now you're moving. You know what I mean? Simeon becomes goes from 2-hole hitter to now maybe 7th. It's tough. I mean, it would be nice. I think it makes more sense than the Dodgers. Because the Dodgers got way more talent, but. To me, there's a few teams. I'd love to see him in a lineup with Jose Ramirez. I mean, Stephen Kwan, Kyle Tucker, Jose Ramirez. You can't beat that top 3. I mean, you can go head to head with anybody for the top third of that lineup with any team.
If you got those top 3, it becomes an attraction too, especially during you could really make some people go there if you want to play with those guys in that lineup. You think there's something special there.
And Jose Ramirez might not be, that stereotypical 40 home run guy, but he can hit 30 plus, and he's showing you he could do it without anybody in that lineup. So just imagine if you start getting somebody in that lineup, his numbers will be even better. That's the thing. He could do it without somebody, and I don't think Tucker can. I think Tucker needs somebody.
Yeah, and I think he'd fit that lineup well. I think playing with Jose Ramirez, it would be a good partnership, and I can see Jose Ramirez really being appreciative, trying to bring someone else in like he thought he had sign-winning contract. He didn't sign for as much because they thought they were going to bring more guys in, and they haven't yet. And he's been vocal about it a little bit as well. So maybe this is the offseason. There's a lot of good places for Tucker, but I think we nailed it with the Dodgers. I don't think that's the greatest spot.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see because I think everybody's waiting for that domino to fall. And once that one does, then you'll start to see everybody else, which we'll talk about Bregman later too.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Here's another fun one, which I actually really liked. It was the Detroit Tigers. They finally made a move this offseason in signing closer Kenley Jensen to a 1-year, $11 million deal, club option for 2027. Listen, he's 38 years old. He's still a great closer. I mean, they got the numbers with the Angels, I mean, he finished a top 13 closer last year. He went 5-4, 59 innings pitched, 57 strikeouts, 19 walks, 29 saves, a 2.59 ERA. 2.59, 238 points, 3.8 a start. I think it's a great move. I think he's going to be the primary closer with the Tigers. That should make him a top 10 closer at least. I wouldn't even be surprised if he slides into like the top 6. And I think it should finally get him to 500 saves. So I think it's a great sign for them. It's $11 million. I mean, yeah, it seems like a lot in baseball terms. It's really not. We've seen contracts just get thrown away. So I think it's a great move. I think they shore up the bullpen, but they haven't done anything else. And that's if I'm a Tigers fan, I'm a little scared about that.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about him last time we were live, right, Doug? And we talked about how great he is, as a whole. He's going to be a Hall of Fame candidate, if not potentially, a first ballot, just because you look at the numbers compared to the all-time greats. He's right up there. And he was a little overshadowed last year by Aroldis Chapman, too, just because Chapman was so good with the Red Sox. He had a different location, and age-wise, too. We're talking guys that are 38, 39 years old, still throwing 100 miles an hour in Chapman. But I like the move. I'm not going to lie with you. Do you think I mean, that could be a top 10 closer, right? We're talking somewhat of an early pick for a reliever going into next year by playing with Detroit. And, just to go down a little rabbit hole with Detroit, are we sure they're going to be as competitive as they were last year? If they didn't really make too many moves, they're really relying on those same guys to come back and make that same push like they did last year with the ALCS. Or are we just going to see another Indians team that did that the previous year, where they went to the ALCS and then didn't do much in that offseason and then took that step back?
It's surprising because you took the Central and they just none of those teams have in actually the last couple of years made pretty big signings. They're always one or two players out from I think making the World Series, and they do absolutely nothing. We talk about the Indians all the time wasting Jose Ramirez. I mean, you go out, you get Stephen Kwan. Stephen Kwan produces, right? But then you trade Shane Bieber. You kind of scratch your head. Still make the playoffs, but then you're knocked out and you don't do anything yet to address anything. And you're seeing the same thing with the Tigers. Now, if they go out and they end up signing Alex Bregman, who, listen, I don't know. I wouldn't pay him what he wants. That's all I know. I think he thinks he's worth more than what he is. Unfortunately, he must not have been around for the second half of his season last year because his numbers weren't good at all. But if they go out and sign a veteran bat like that, then it kind of puts them into the talk of being being a little better. But then you also got to realize now this whole Skubal situation and what that's causing in the clubhouse and the headaches. Listen, Skubal, no matter where he goes, I know people say the Dodgers, and everybody's going to the Dodgers. Is it fun to picture him there? It would be. I mean, the entire staff has won a Cy Young, for God's sakes. If that does happen. But I mean, for baseball, I really don't want him to go. I don't think he's going to go. I think he'll probably will get traded because from what I'm reading, they're just so far off on, what he thinks he's worth and what the team thinks he's worth. So where he's going to go, I couldn't tell you. I don't think it's going to be the Dodgers. honestly, I think it might be the Mets. I think the Mets are going to come in and just make a trade and then sign him long term. You know, Cohen is not afraid to do whatever he wants and make any trade he wants. Let's not forget, you know, he a couple of years ago bringing in Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander, which at the time was like, oh, this is great. And then everybody realized those people were way past their prime. I think he learned from his mistakes and he's going to get somebody who's in his prime. And I think Skubal would be a great candidate for that because that's what they need. They need an ace. That makes sense for me. You know, the Yankees don't make that much sense because they already have, you know, 3 really good starting pitchers, 4 if you want to add in Will Warren or, you know, Schlittler, you know, but I kind of see Skubal being traded and I kind of hopefully would like to see him go to the Mets, but who knows? They're not going to trade within the division. Who knows? Maybe you have a black horse team like the Giants or the Diamondbacks come in and get him. I mean, Skubal replacing Gallen for the Diamondbacks. Doesn't that sound fun? You know,
Hey,
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know they're not going to probably make moves. I think they're going to be a worse team on paper than they were last year.
I feel like if they don't hit the ground running, they might be sellers at this deadline, depending on how everything goes leading up to now between the rest of the offseason and then going into the season. We saw last year Baltimore took a huge step back from the previous year that they just had. Detroit could be one of those candidates to do the same exact thing if they don't get it under control, I feel. If they don't get a Bregman, what's going to be their other option out there? There's only, like we said, maybe about a handful of like studs really still out there. And really the only one that's a candidate to go to Detroit right now is Bregman. And if they miss on him, they're bringing the same squad back. And if they do take that step back, and like you said, if they do move Skubal, they become sellers all over again. And you're going to have to break up the band, unfortunately. But I'm not wishing that on them. It's a young team still. Obviously, a lot of their top prospects came in, like Spencer Torkelson, and you got Riley Green still, if you can cut down on the strikeouts. Still a very solid team, but I'm just saying they could be a candidate to be one of those teams that take that step back.
Yeah, I mean, they're lucky because they're in a position where a lot of their offenses are going to go anywhere. They're all young. They're all under contract. The only question mark right now is Skubal, and it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with him. I mean, if they do lose him, then, I mean, you're losing, you know, a 20-game winner. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do, but I don't think they can. If they want to stay competitive, they cannot afford to lose Skubal. It's that simple.
And like you said, going back to the Mets, it's like, man, there's only really like a handful of aces out there, right? Really true aces. And Skubal's one of them. So if you can lock down Skubal, who is still relatively young here, obviously, really in his prime, and you can lock him down, that's the right move. You saw it last year with Boston with Crochet. They hit a home run, I think, with that, only getting, $160 million that they paid him. So I think that was a really good deal for the Red Sox, but they went out there, they got their ace, they secured him. If the Mets can do the same thing with Skubal, that would be, I think, a pretty good fit for him. And really, that would fit the bill. You know, having that number one guy right in front of that rotation, it's just nice to have. You know, we grew up on Pedro. We knew it was Pedro Day. Everything was going to be fine. So Skubal is that same exact type of character. Skubal Day, we're good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's still teams that are, you know, Tampa Bay is looking to trade a couple more. They're starting pitchers. So, I mean, you could still do it via trade, but with other teams, but I don't think any of them, I mean, obviously Skubal is one of the best pitchers in baseball. So if you have an opportunity to go out and get him, I think you go out and get him. My opinion. So we'll see what happens. All right, let's speaking of the Diamondbacks, here's a good one, right? Let me put him in. Here he is. My fantasy star last year, I gotta say, I got him pretty late. So the Diamondbacks signed Merrill Kelly to a 2-year, $40 million deal. Kelly had a career year last year, but if you forget, he was traded to Texas during the trade deadline. He wasn't as successful as he was in Arizona. The numbers weren't there for Texas, but they were still good, you know. And I think for him, it was an easy choice to go back to Arizona. I'm sure he's lucky they offered him the deal. But he's 37 years old. I mean, guy went 12-9, 184 innings pitched, 167 strikeouts, 48 walks, a 3.5 ERA. He gave you 348 points, 10.9 a start, a top 22 starting pitcher, a late round steal for a lot of people. Like I said, I got him really, really late. And he ended up being a top 22 pitcher. So again, I don't see much difference as far as from like a fantasy perspective. I think he's still going to be pretty solid. Obviously his ERA is probably going to go up. He might not get as many wins because they don't have Josh Naylor anymore. They might be losing Kento Marte now, So the offense is definitely going to take a hit, but they'll still have Corbin Carroll and they'll still have Perdomo. So we'll see what happens with those. But again, I think he could still be another really late steal. I mean, when people draft, it's like they do two things, right? You either go off of what whatever platform you use, ESPN, CBS, whatever they predict these players are going to, the numbers that they're going to put up for the year, or you look at last year and you filter with the numbers they did put up last year. There's only two really ways to look at when you're drafting, right? I think a lot of people are going to look at prediction numbers. I don't think they're going to look at how he did last year. And I think that's going to let him drop really low in drafts, or really high, I guess. So you could potentially pick him in the teens, late teens, and still get yourself not a top 22, but is a top 40 pitcher out of the realm of possibilities, for him. Maybe not.
No, it's a good signing. Coming back party, right? Going back to Arizona. Obviously, it worked the first time. Might as well work the second time. And I expect the same numbers, like you said. 20 million a year, though. I mean, good for him. That's a pretty big deal. 2 years, 40 million for a 37-year-old Merrill Kelly. And like you said, he was definitely a top 25 pitcher last year, but it's not a guy that you sign $20 million and you got to be like, well, if we start going the other way, I'm going to trade him. I feel like that's $20 million. You're going to be stabling our rotation for the next 2 years. It's interesting. It's very interesting. It's a lot of money, but yeah, solid player. He'll be a later pick, and he'll give you some quality starts along the way. Great fantasy pickup. It's a sneaky guy to have on your bench.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like a Luis Severino. He's like maybe not as good, but you know what I mean. It's like if the matchup's there, you play him, and he'll probably reward you handsomely for doing that.
Yeah.
All right. So we go from the Diamondbacks to another NL team. We're going to talk. Let's do Padres. How's that sound?
Ooh, Padres?
Yes. So the Padres, who I think we're in the stages of where it could be like that tear down. They're kind of like teetering. Like, do we tear it down? Do we trade? They actually, because they did get rid of Dylan Cease, but they made a pretty big signing. Well, it's a re-sign because they re-signed free agent starting pitcher Michael King, which little surprising. It was a 3-year, $75 million deal. It's got an opt-out clause after 2026, after 2027. So to me, this is a similar contract I think Tucker would probably sign with the Diamondbacks. You got an opt-out after every year. I get why he did it. The market probably wasn't there. He hasn't been healthy. He went 5-3 last year, 73 innings pitched, 76 strikeouts, 26 walks, a 3.4 ERA, 142 points, 9.5 a start. I mean that's a little above average, but it's if he could be healthy, then you're looking at at least a 12-game winner. The only problem is he's never been healthy. He's always been hurt. So this deal makes sense to me for him. You go in, hopefully you perform first year, you do, then you opt out. Doesn't work. Maybe you build it up. So you went 73 innings. Let's see if you can go to like 125, right? You say, all right, I'm going to stay with the Padres another year. Then you hope you stay healthy. Then you go 170. And now you're broken in. Now you're ready to sign the big deal that you wanted. I do like King when he's healthy and when he's going, but he's never pitched a full starter workload. He's constantly on the IL at least a few times a year. I know it was reported the Yankees, Mets, a few other teams were in on him, but they probably didn't want to pay for a healthy, for a healthy King. And that was probably the money King was looking for. He was looking for money that he would get if he was healthy. You know, it's a good deal for both. Gives King a chance to show teams when he's healthy, when he is healthy for an entire season, what he can look like. And like I said, he can opt out. So I think it's a great deal for them and the team since they just lost Dylan Cease.
Yeah, I think so too. I think 25 mil is a perfect number for him. It's like a prove-it deal, like you said. I do think, we joke about it, about that dark horse and Cy Young candidate. This guy is a dark horse Cy Young candidate when he is on. Like you said, though, he needs to pitch the whole year in order to get that. And if he can do that, then maybe next offseason, if he could be a top 5, top 10 pitcher, which, again, I'm high on Michael King. I'm going to put him higher on my board. And just to let you know, I'm going to put you on notice right there, Doug. In our leagues, I'm going after this guy. This is my guy.
All yours, buddy.
It's all in. Perfect. So, but like I said, when he's on, his stuff is nasty. And if he could just put it together for a full year, we could really see his potential. And like I said, maybe next year he'll go out and get that big contract that he's really looking for. But I mean, 3 for 75, nothing to sniff at either, though. That's pretty good money still.
Yeah, and like I mean, honestly, what really makes that contract is the opt-outs.
Yes.
I mean, if they don't have that, then I don't know what he would be doing. I mean, he's not that. If I'm Michael King, I definitely don't want to sign just a 1-year deal. Living year by year isn't the best way to get noticed in baseball. You want a couple of years and then show them you can stay healthy, and that's going to push you on to, bigger money and better teams when you do become a free agent.
Oh, 100%. And he's going to have to fill that void for Dylan Cease, too. They did lose Dylan Cease.
They did. So it's going to be interesting to see how he's going to react. Like, I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen with him. Yeah, I couldn't tell you. Part of me was like, oh, hopefully he can stay healthy and put it together. But he did struggle, man, a little bit. Some of his starts down the stretch. I don't know if maybe he just started getting fatigue, but some of his, he started hot. I think his ERA was around a 3.2 and then kind of slowly crept back up to the 3.4, 3.5. So we'll see what happens. But the potential's there. No doubt about that. All right. So here's a fun one, right? So Tampa Bay did something that they don't do every day, and they traded within the division, within the AL East. Okay. They sent who I think is a pretty good pitcher, and there's a trade right there. They sent Shane Baz to the Orioles for 4 prospects and a draft pick. Okay. It tells me this kind of just tells me that the prospects might not be that good if you're sending 4 of them for one guy. But Baz has dealt with injury in the past, but I think last year he pitched almost a full workload. He's only 26, although at times he looked great. There were starts he gave up 5+ earned. So I think he still needs to work a couple things out. Tampa probably wanted to get what they could for him now, and Baltimore saw this as a buy low investment. And honestly, if he can give them a decent amount of innings, then I think it's a win for him. I think the real question is, who would you rather have, Grayson or Baz? Because that's who they replaced with this trade was Grayson Rodriguez. Okay. I think, Baz is his replacement. And like I said, his numbers, not bad. 10-12, 166 innings, 176 strikeouts, 64 walks, a 4.8 ERA. Gave you 260 points, 8.4 start, which is kind of above average. I think for me, it comes down to having a great starter versus injury. You know what I mean? Injury or a mediocre starter for the season. Do you want somebody who can go out there and pitch as an average pitcher who once in a while will flash greatness but isn't great, like a Baz, or someone who gets hurt, but when they are healthy, you're getting someone better than Baz? So it's a tough predicament. I understand why Baltimore did it. Honestly, it's tough to pick the two. I mean, do I want to help? Do I want a Baz who could give me 170 innings? And, he got 10 wins on a Tampa Bay team that really, honestly, wasn't like crazy good, right? So, he can pitch in the East. He's been in the East. Would you here's my question. Would you want to keep a Grayson on your team with his potential, even though you know he's an IL stint away? Or would you rather have a Shane Baz on your team that could give you 170 innings?
I think it's going to be Shane Baz. And I'm a Grayson guy too, but I do think it's Shane Baz just because you got Grayson coming off of an injury. And, sometimes sometimes know there's just more to it than what it is. And with Grayson, it wasn't just like overnight. Like, we thought he was going to be available way sooner than he was supposed to be, and then it just didn't come back. So maybe there's more to it than what we thought. And then, like I said, you had Tyler Ward go over in that trade for Grayson. And it was just a 1-for-1 kind of straight up. And Tyler Ward's good. He's got some pop in his back for sure. But it was surprising because Grayson, we thought, just had just a higher ceiling than what he's hit so far. Just being one of those top guys and, being a prospect and coming up and, really showing it at times. But I think the injuries are a concern. Now flip it to Shane Baz. Shane Baz last year, he was 26 years old. That was his first full season. 166 innings. You could talk about the high ERA, but the strikeouts were there. He can cut down on the walks a little bit, but that was his first full season. So maybe Baltimore sees that and says, hey, we're going to try to get this guy at his peak right here because we know when he's fully healthy and he's already built it up to 166 innings now, the expectation, I would think, is, bump it up to 175, 180 innings for a Shane Baz. And I would expect more output from him going into this year, too. Just another year under his belt. So this could be a guy that is, a game changer for Baltimore. And like I said, some of these younger, smaller market teams, they have to get creative on how they bring guys in. And this is one of those ways. So I think they addressed something that they needed. And I think they saw something in Grayson that they said, you know what? We're just going to cut the ties now. We're not going to just wait on our guy to come back. We need a guy now. So I think it's a pretty good replacement.
Yeah, I do too. And don't, like you said, that Tyler Ward trade, I mean, when they got Pete Alonso, to me, that trade made even more sense. Now you're building your bench. Now you got power guys. You have a 3-4 hitter, in those two guys. It's a really good lineup.
Yeah.
If you were to rank these teams in the AL East as far as full lineups go, I think you're looking at, I still think the Yankees are probably the better lineup on paper just because what Judge can bring versus what Vlad can bring. But if Toronto does go out and they do end up getting Tucker, then yeah, give me that lineup. But I think right now, as it stands, you go Yankees, you go Toronto, you go Baltimore, you go Red Sox, and you go Tampa.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. And we haven't got to the Red Sox yet, but we know they haven't done much. So it's starting to turn into a problem.
It's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about them in a second, but let's talk about this. This was a fun one, and I really like this, and I don't know what to expect. So expectations is key with anything in fantasy and baseball, period. But even the Chicago White Sox got in the offseason fun, right? They signed first, third baseman. I'm going to butcher this name.
Do it.
I sincerely apologize. Munetaka Murakami.
That sounds good.
Right? From the pond.
Murakami?
Yeah, Murakami.
Murakami. Okay. I can get with that.
So it's a 2-year, $34 million deal. The guy's 25. He's got 246 home runs. He hit 36 when he was 19 years old. He's the 2-time Central League MVP. However, as good as that sounds, it is not all good. Okay. His strikeout rate over the last 3 years have gone up and average over 28% or once a game. So not only has his strikeouts gone up, but his batting average has gone down. So I hope he makes it. He is in that prime. He's getting ready to hit it. And when the contract is up, it's going to be a make or break as far as what he's going to want long-term or afterwards. Listen, it's a bad White Sox offense. It's not good. He has no protection in that lineup. And it's been hit or miss with regard to international players adjusting to American baseball. You know, if he can, if I can make a prediction, the home runs will probably be there, but I think the strikeouts will too. I see almost an LA De La Cruz type production, not the stolen bases though. So, you know, again, you know, it's wild to think that this guy was supposed to get, you know, based off predictions, 7 years, 150 million. So this is really a prove it deal for him, and to see if he could play in America. You know, if the White Sox go and they trade Luis Roberts, then that, to me, that hurts him even more. I don't know where he's going to be in that lineup. I just know it's not a really good lineup to be in, especially if you're trying to make a name for yourself. But if you can hit there, you can hit anywhere. So once his contract's up, you might be able to get a really good payday. He's only 25. It's a 2-year deal. He'll be 27. He won't even be in his prime yet.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed that. I mean, I think the power is going to be there. I do think the strikeouts are still going to be there. I think the team that he plays for is going to be a crux in fantasy for sure, just because we've seen really good players play for really poor teams, and you've seen the input output, and it could definitely be more if they're in more of an in-depth lineup. So I do think he's going to hurt from that. So like we said, he's going to get the home runs, right? But are the RBIs going to be on with it? Maybe not. So it's an interesting deal. It's an interesting team. Kind of threw me off when I read it, when I saw it, when it popped up on my phone. And all we can do is just hope and pray that he has a great year and has a prove it deal here, like you said, and hopefully moves on from a White Sox team, which I don't know what the plan is with them. I don't know if they have really a plan. You know, I do like Colston Montgomery. I mean, they do have Kyle Teo coming back for a second, you know, major league season. So he might have some improvement there. Luis Robert, I mean, who knows with that guy at this point. But there is some things to be hopeful for. So maybe if you throw in a mix of a young guy that's got some professional representation, you know, coming from KBO league, you know, maybe they can stir it up. They kind of had a better season what they thought they were going to have last year. Maybe they can turn it into something this year and maybe make a little push in this AL Central weakness division. Who knows?
Yeah, and you make a good point. Kyle Teel, right? I mean, this is a guy who will probably could be a top 5 catcher. Like he came on pretty good. You know, he was a really top prospect for the Red Sox, and you know they traded. He was the big part of the Garrett Crochet trade, and it looks like both of the teams kind of made out because Kyle Teel looks like a big league catcher, and you know he might not be the guy you want batting cleanup or third, which I think they are having him bat third or fourth, but you know, something tells me that Murakami is going to be batting ahead of him. So, you know, might give him some kind of protection, you know, just be interesting to see what that lineup is going to look like. But it's a good sign for them. At least they can, it's something exciting for White Sox fans that have no excitement in a very long time. At least they can say they got somebody.
Hey, look at the top 4. If you put it together, you could say Luis Robert batting leadoff, and then you have Colston Montgomery batting second. Then you got, you know, Murakami coming at third, and then Kyle Teel batting fourth. That's in my opinion, Doug, that's a major league top 4.
Yeah, it's not a bad lineup at all, really. So I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, it's exciting because you know you're talking about it, but now you're knowing, okay, you know what? The spring training is right around the corner. You know, we're getting ready to see what these guys can do, and the big part is. My favorite is the spring training overreactions. Like,
oh yeah.
You know, oh my God. Like Robert Fisk from the first baseman for the Detroit Tigers 5 years ago hits like 400 and he becomes a top 5 first baseman off the board. You know, James Loney from Tampa Bay was a top, you know, hitting 450 for spring. It's like the overreactions are hilarious. I love them. And you're going to see that a lot for sure.
Hey, happened this past year. Remember Sandy? Sandy had a fantastic spring. We thought he was going to be back all the way. And then he didn't come back until about last week of September.
Yeah, it wasn't that good at all. All right, let's take a quick break. Then we're going to come back and we'll dig into the Red Sox. It'll take some time for that because there's a lot to talk about with that. So don't go anywhere. Well, use the restroom, fill up your drink if you have to. If not, stay put. You get to listen to my favorite Black Hawk Down bumper.
You're going back in?
Still men out there. God damn. When I go home, people ask me, hey, Hoot, why do you do it, man? Why? You some kind of war junkie? I won't say a goddamn word. Why? They won't understand. They won't understand why we do it. They won't understand it's about the men next to you. And that's it. That's all it is.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
I want to make it clear that the views expressed by our hosts are not considered the official stance of MBR Views. Remember, this is all.
And now the guys you just love to hate.
Trash. It's
garbage.
Man. It's a dumpster fire, man. It's a man.
Come on.
It's not.
Doug and Mike are back with more Bourbon and Ball.
All right, so as promised, we're going to dig right into the Red Sox, man. I mean, they made a move, not the move any Red Sox fan really. Well, I guess some of us saw it coming. We knew it was going to happen. Kind of wasn't the move that we really wanted. You know, we were looking for something bigger, something better. But it's still a move that I think was good. I don't hate it, you know. So, you know, they did what they needed to do, I think. You know, to me, it was an essential trade. I get why they did it. So they traded with the Cardinals. They got first baseman William Contreras, and they got cash, and they gave up Hunter Dobbins, starting pitcher, and a pair of pitching prospects. Contreras is 33, but I think he fills that void left by Cassis, who was supposed to hold down first base for the next, decade, right? You know, Contreras' numbers last year, 257, 20 homers, 80 ribbies, 70 runs, 142 strikeouts, 5 stolen bases, gave you 2.1 a start, 279 points. Not great, not terrible, just about average. You know, I think whether you like to admit it or not, it is an upgrade for first base for the Red Sox. Whether you like to admit it or not, you know. But now you hope they start getting a few more big names. And a few more big names are still out there, right? You still need a SP2 to get behind Crochet. Sonny Gray is not the guy. And if they think he is, I don't know what's going on. You know, you still need a middle of the order bat, preferably 2, to fill the void of Rafael Devers, which all that money came off the books that they saved, and of course Alex Bregman. So all in all, I think it's a good trade. I think it needed to happen. I think seeing Contreras' numbers in a horrible lineup with St. Louis tells me that he could probably be better. You know, maybe a top 15 first baseman. Who knows? I think he could still put up better numbers, but again, it's all going to depend on who they resign, if they sign anybody else. But I think it's a good trade. I think they needed to do it because they were hurting for first base last year. This shores it up.
Yeah, I agree. I always go back to the point of people getting creative about filling voids, and this is again one of those things where you're taking a guy from a poor team from last year in St. Louis, really starting to change positions a little bit the last few years, playing first base and catcher, and really transitioning into this first base role. And it looks like that's what's going to happen here. I do think he might catch a couple of games to give a couple guys a break. I think that was something that the Sox were also looking for. I do know they were sticking their nose for a little bit on Kyle Teal getting him back at one point, but I think that kind of fell off. I think that was more of just a rumor, but I do think they want another guy in there. So him at first base, I think it's going to be okay. I don't know. I think what we thought Wilson Contreras was going to be going into his career, you know, starting off with Chicago, there was really high expectations for him. And really, I'm going through his numbers here. It's not like he's crushed it since. And hopefully the Red Sox can maybe unlock some of that, but also we need to also keep him on the field. I'm looking at this, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't even see a full season that he's actually played. He only played 135 games last year, but the year before that was 84, 125, 113. I'm looking 128. So a lot of gaps there. You know, we're talking 3 out of 4 games that he's missing, or 1 out of 4 he is missing. So I think those are the big question marks is, can we unlock that potential that we think he has, being a 30 home run guy, which he hasn't done in his career before? Or are we going to get the guy that's going to be that injury prone and is a, strikeout per game guy? So it's going to be interesting, and we'll see. It's the Sox are Sox right now. That's what they're doing. They're playing these little nitpick games instead of just pulling out the wallet. So it's a little interesting and concerning, I think, if you're a Red Sox fan. What do you think, though?
You say that, but this Bregman thing just leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. Not for the Red Sox, but for Bregman. Like, you go out there, you offer him a contract. He at this point, I feel like they're just outbidding themselves with these contracts, because now I guess they come back and they're offering him a bigger contract. It's like, listen, Bregman's a good hitter. He's an MLB hitter. I take nothing away from that. His defense is stellar. It's par none to anybody in third base. Maybe Arenado is probably a better defensive third baseman. But the money that Alex Bregman wants, he's just not worth. You look at great first half, gets hurt, comes back and just dogs it. Doesn't look good. Doesn't run stuff out. Probably still hurting from the injury. If that's the case, maybe he should have just said to the trainers, "Hey, I need another week." Take it. You're on the end of your contract. It's your last year for with the Sox. Take the year and just relax with it, and take the extra week and come back and be fully healthy and show everybody you can still hit. But to sit there and say opt out, which I thought was a huge contract for him to opt out of.
Yeah.
And the Red Sox offered to him again. He obviously hasn't gotten any offers better than that. Now the Red Sox come back and offer him, a longer, more lucrative contract. And I just feel like they're outbidding themselves. It's like, okay, we get, like, Red Sox fans want you to make the splash. They want you to sign these big players. But it's like, obviously at some point you got to say, hey, enough's enough. I'm not going to be paying for this guy who's just not worth it. I'm not going to open my wallet for somebody who's just not worth it. And, I didn't think he was worth the first contract, but, they come back and they give him another one and they offer him the same one. And then now they're giving him more, and he's still debating. Well, you know what? Fuck him. That's what I say. I hate to be blunt about it, but it's like, make it move. Like, what are you waiting for? You think more people are going to get desperate? No, they're not. They're going to trade and they're going to sign other players. That's what they're going to do. They're not just going to be like, okay, well, we really want you. Here's more money. Here's more money. And you say, all right, well, you know what? We're not going to sit there and wait for you to figure out what team you want to come to. If you're not going to make a decision by, this date, we're going to go out and get somebody else. It's that simple. And you know what? I hope the Red Sox do. I hope they go out and they get somebody else. They don't offer him the money anymore, and he gets stuck signing a 1-year prove-it deal with probably the Tigers. That's what I care. That's my 2 cents. I could care less about Alex Bregman right now.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. The whole thing is weird. It's like, what's going on at this point? There's something going on. The timeline is just like, it's out there. I don't know what he's holding off on. I know he's a Burrows guy, so, like, is it him that's holding all the cards, that's waiting for the dominoes to fall? Because, like I said to you earlier this week, it's like, once one of these guys signs, the rest of them are going to sign. So I don't know if it's just a Red Sox thing. I don't know if it's I don't know if there's things going on with that Red Sox organization that we just don't know about. And I feel like sometimes there's more to it. Sometimes, just like with the Devers thing last year, and him going, them flying to Kansas City to talk to him about this, and, like, is there a lot of dysfunction in that clubhouse that we're just not hearing about? And maybe that's, even the money might be fantastic, and they know he's a veteran leader. Maybe he doesn't want the headache. I don't know. Obviously speculating, but I do think there might be a third team involved in him as well. And like you said, Detroit is maybe that other team for sure. But let's just talk about him again. Let's just talk about the Blue Jays. I mean, he can go to Toronto, and it sounds like, according to Scott Boras, that Toronto's holding all the cards. So it sounds like they got their hand in everything, which means they probably got their hand in Tucker. They might have their hand in Bregman. It sounds like they got a pulse check on everything. They got a pulse check on Bo Bichette, who we haven't even talked about yet. So there's a lot of things going on in Toronto, I think, are just you're waiting for one to fall, and it sounds like Toronto's going to be a part of that domino effect.
It's interesting you say. I don't think it's a Red Sox clubhouse issue with Bregman. I think it's a Bregman issue. Like, I think he just wants to go to the highest bidder. He's not a leader guy. He never was. I mean, you look at him when he was with Houston, wasn't the leader of that clubhouse at all. He's more of like a kind of quiet, keep to himself type of guy. And I think when he got to Boston, they were expecting him to be a leader, and he probably didn't like that. He didn't like that role. So I think that's what's causing him to be like, well, I don't want to go back there because they're not signing anybody else. If I go back there and they sign me, I'm the leader, especially with Devers gone. I'm the leader. And he's just not a leader. So I don't think it's a clubhouse issue because I think they addressed the clubhouse issue in trading Devers. That was the issue, right? Rafael Devers was a clubhouse issue. It's a guy who didn't want to play first base, didn't want to bat DH for the benefit of the team. So they said, all right, whatever, then we'll just trade you and we'll let you go. So they fixed that issue.
Yeah.
But now, with Bregman, he just strikes me as a guy who's not a leadership type guy. And I think he just wants to maximize his money. He just wants to make the most and not have to be a leader. But when you make that type of money, you have to be the leader. That's the kicker. It's like you can't have one without the other. If you're making over $100 million, you're the face of the franchise. You're one of the faces at least. Like when you look at the Yankees last year, you had Judge and you had Soto. Judge is the face of the Yankees, but Soto was right there with them. And so was Stanton. So wasn't Bellinger. Like all those guys in those big mega contracts for the Yankees, they're kind of slowly picking up these bigger roles because they're making bigger money. And I just don't think Bregman wants that role. I think he just wants to make his money, wants to go to work, wants to play third, wants to hit, and then he wants to go home. Doesn't want to do interviews, doesn't want to address issues in the clubhouse, doesn't want to address issues with players and anything else. Just wants to do his job and go home. And that's, unfortunately, I don't think you can.
Yeah, that's not. I don't think that's a realistic world we live in when it comes to, like you said, the expectation of how much money you're making and what you have to bring to the table. You got to be the face of the franchise. You got to make that kind of money, and that means your role's more extended than just stuff on the field as well. But what it does, though, it puts a humongous fat egg on the Red Sox face, though, because you got a guy that during the season last year, you had a guy like Devers. Obviously, the trump card was, well, we got Bregman, so now you got to play first and this and that. Bregman's here for the longevity, supposedly. And then all of a sudden you move Devers, and now you can't retain Bregman. That's a fumble in my eyes if you're the Red Sox. And it's tough because you can't, like you said, it could be a player thing. But sometimes you have to identify that, in that moment and be like, man, are we making the right moves here? Because is Bregman going to re-sign this offseason, which he hasn't yet to this point. So I just feel like the Sox almost overplayed their hand last year with Devers trading him, pissing him off, trying to play first base, not being able to. And then now you're not being able to retain Bregman right away. Seems, bad right now. And like you said, now we're going to go out and get Wilson Contreras. And now we're going to piece this together. And it stinks. Something stinks.
To your point, though, I will say when they did get rid of him, they still won without him.
They sure did.
They played better without him.
They sure did.
I think the only tell-all sign about that whole trade will be what they do with the money they freed up. If they go out and they sign a couple big-name guys, then I would think that was a really good trade. If they do absolutely nothing and just pocket the cash for the year and figure it out next year, then that's just horrible. So it's going to be interesting. We'll look at free agents later on, and I tell you who I'd like them to pick up, but hopefully they do something. You can't just sit there. And they even got, St. Louis to pay for most of Contreras' contract, so it's not like they even paid for it. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with this money. I don't know what their plans are. Excuse me. But I don't think because you have all this extra money, you just keep offering it to Alex Bregman. I don't think that's the answer either. Because if Bregman comes in this lineup, and I don't know, I just don't see him as the guy. That's just me.
Yeah, and there's alternatives out there too. I mean, Bo Bichette is still not signed as well, and that's a guy that could easily move to third, or you can move Story to third as well. Like, there's still, I think, impactful names out there that they could replace Bregman with.
Well, that's fair. We'll talk more free agency toward the end. We still got some time left. But here was a fun trade, and this one I really, really liked. It's the A's. Come on, the A's made a fun splash, right? They acquired infield outfielder Jeff McNeil from the Mets. They gave up pitching prospect Yordan Rodriguez. I think the trade kind of makes sense for both, as the Mets have a ton of young outfield talent, and this gives the A's kind of that veteran bat and that young lineup. McNeil's numbers last year: 243, 12 homers, 54 ribbies, 42 runs, 55 strikeouts, 3 stolen bases, 2.1 a start, 260 points. Obviously a couple of IL stints there, but you add him into that lineup, and let me show you what that lineup's going to look like. It's actually a really fun trade. You're adding, so you have Kurtz, Langoliers, Soderstrom, then you got Rooker, then you get McNeil, then you get Jacob Wilson, Lawrence Butler, Max Muncy, the other Max Muncy, right? I mean, that's a pretty fun young lineup. I think, that's the spot for Jeff McNeil. On top of that, you want him batting fifth. And I know he batted more toward the top with the Mets, but I think he'll probably be more successful in this lineup than the Mets just because of where he is in his position. I think it's a great lineup. It's fun. It's a good trade, man. It's a good trade for both teams.
It really is. And I look at that lineup, and I don't see a lot of veterans in that lineup, and I think he kind of fits the bill for him as well. I think he's a versatile guy that can play a little bit outfield as well. And, we talked about Oakland last year. I don't care. I just called him Oakland. I want to keep calling him Oakland because, that's how we grew up on him, right? But the A's, they have a well-rounded lineup. They came up young last year. They looked really good. And from a fantasy perspective, there's a lot of guys that are very relevant in this lineup. I don't see anything changing. They're staying in Sacramento, so they're still going to be in that same ballpark. They're bringing back the same guys. They're all young guys anyway. And I see Lawrence Butler. I think he's going to have a bounce back as well from last year. I think he had a bad year. I think he's a great candidate this year to be bouncing back and making that team even better. So, interesting lineup. I don't know if it's enough to win the West, but it's fun, energetic, and I'll be drafting a few of those guys.
I'll have a couple on my draft board, believe it or not. My question to you is, though, do you like how this lineup is right now?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. You got to let it play out. Denzel Clark, I've heard a lot of good things. Pretty electric player down in minors. We'll see how he fits in the mold of this. But at this point, I think we got a big enough sample size of all these guys to know what they're capable of doing. And, obviously being a smaller market and, finances are what they are for what it is. I think this is a very, very healthy lineup, very young lineup, and it's got a lot of potential. It reminds me of Baltimore even like a couple of years ago when all those guys started to come up and started playing together. Very similar.
My only qualm with this lineup is I'd love to see like Lawrence Butler bat leadoff. You Shea bat in second. You move Nick to third. You keep Rooker there. Then you go Tyler Soderstrom fifth. You drop McNeil and everybody else down. So McNeil becomes your sixth hole. And then you got Jacob Wilson, Muncy, Clark. That's my only thing. Nick Kurtz is such a power bat. I don't know if you want to bat and lead off because I think you're going to suck some of that power away from him, putting him in that spot. That's the only thing I don't really like about the lineup. To me, Lawrence Butler to me is the leadoff type. If he's going, obviously, he did kind of struggle last year, so they took him out of that spot because he wasn't a leadoff hitter. So it'll be interesting to see how they adjust this lineup. But I would still like to see Kurtz bat in third for sure. You bat him in front of Rooker. You got your home run duo right there.
Dude, this is the best part about this lineup. It's so flexible. You can move a lot of these guys in different areas, especially if they're hot and cold, and then I think it's easier when you do have a bunch of these guys that can pretty much hit anywhere. to like get one guy out of a slump. So it's like, hey, Lawrence Butler, like you said, he was batting top of that lineup, and it's like, you know what? Maybe instead of having him be in that 2-hole or something, we'll slide Jacob Wilson in that 2-hole because we know he's a contact hitter. He's going to be swinging, so we know he's going to try to do something at the top. Or it's like, hey, Brent Roker, if you really need that push, you put him at the 2-hole. You know, you drop down Kurtz. Obviously, Kurtz, I think batting leadoff is weird. I wouldn't do that probably, but I would probably put him at third or fourth or even second in this lineup. But again, a lot of versatility here. And hey, Shane Leclerc's like great catcher last year. Really kind of took it on the second half. Don't sleep on him. You know, he's got some pop in his bat as well.
Who's the first A's that's going to be drafted off the board?
First A drafted off this board, I think, is going to be Nick Kirks. I think first base is one of those weird positions we saw last year where it was just really tough to identify who's going to be the top dog. And I think it ended up being like Cody Bellinger, I think. And it wasn't like he had like an outlandish amount of points at the top at first base, but it's just kind of the way it fell out, I think, in our league. So it can go hot and cold. I think Vinny P was a top 5 guy last year too. But Nick Kurtz has all the making to be a top 5 first baseman. And honestly, I can see him going ahead of guys like Brent Roker, who I think is falling in draft boards right now. Jacob Wilson, Tyler Soderstrom, he's going to be up there too. But I still think Nick Kurtz is just a tier above that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Kurtz is. I mean, you could even make the case maybe Jacob Wilson, shortstop.
Yeah, he had a little bumpy second half, but the first half he was like, it was awesome. He didn't strike out at all. No. He didn't walk either. But man, he was hitting for average. I think at one point it was like maybe June, he was still hitting like 360. It was insane. So it could definitely go either way with that lineup. I like all those guys. I think there's several guys in that lineup that you could draft this year and feel comfortable with in your lineup.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you though. I think Kurtz is probably going to be the first A that's going to be drafted, and it's probably going to be maybe the third. What do you think? Third round, fourth round?
You say Kurtz?
Yeah, Kurtz.
Yeah, I think so. I think third, fourth round, I think is fair. I'm in the very early stages of mocks right now, and seems like all over the place, but he seems available later in boards. But I do think that's going to be a guy that people reach for when draft day comes around.
Yeah. Especially if you have him last year, right? You have him last year and you knew that he was so good. He's one of those guys where you probably don't realize how good they are until they're on your team. So if you had him last year, especially toward the end of the year when he was hitting like, he had those multi-homer games, you're probably going to reach for him a little bit for sure. I think that's anybody though, I had Josh Naylor. I might reach for Josh Naylor.
Hey, we talk about it almost every time. Hey, if you got guys, go get them. But, Nick Kurtz has definitely made a name for himself last year, but especially particular guys that owned him. That it's like, man, I'm not going to forget about that guy, what he did for me. So we always talk about the guys, what they do for you and what they don't do for you and how much you love them or you hate them. I think Nick Kurtz right now is in a good position to be an overreach, but maybe still hit that ceiling at the same time. That makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. It does. We'll see what happens with that.
I don't know. This flu, Doug, it's got to be going, I don't even know what's right, what's wrong. It's all over the place.
All right. I'm here to help you, man. I'm here to help you, all right? Here's another fun signing. This one was by, I think this was much needed, to be honest with you. It was by the Astros. So I think they might have gotten Framber Valdez's replacement. I'm not entirely sure. They signed 26-year-old Japanese ace. Not again. Tetsuya Maui. Yeah, we'll say Maui, right?
Maui, yeah.
A 3-year, $63 million deal, $54 million guaranteed. But again, it does offer opt-outs after every year, very similar to a lot of the contracts these Japanese players have been signing. Every year opt-outs. His numbers last year, listen to this, man. Again, it's the Nippon Professional League, a little different, but 10-5, a 1.92, 178 strikeouts and 163 innings, 45 walks. I mean, listen, it's a great sign for the club. it's a win-win for both sides, right? There's still a chance Framber resigns. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to happen. If I was a betting man, I'd say he's not. But I think if he does, this puts him over the top with the rotation. You go Framber, Amaui, Hunter Brown. That's a great top three. I still think they need to sign a player of Framber's caliber just because the transition for a lot of these international players is going to be tough, right? Some is going to be tougher than others. And I think if you do have a Framber in there, at least it gives them some sense of security with the depth. But we'll see what they do, right? I mean, I think Amaui, depending on league size, he has to be maybe a 6th, 8th rounder, just based on the potential. He probably, I think, won't be involved when the first run of starting pitchers come off the board, but you could see him with that 2nd or 3rd tier run that might probably comes off. It's just there's so many question marks with these players. I mean, look at the guy who was the big signing for the Dodgers last year that everybody got really early and just got hurt and didn't really play. He came back as a relief pitcher. I can't even think of his name because
Roki Sasaki.
Yes.
Yeah.
How early did he go off boards?
Around 9-10. We're talking 9, roughly top 100 player for sure.
Yeah.
And he wasn't.
No. And I think that's what that. I mean, if you're going to draft one of these guys, I think it has to just be one of them. I don't think you want to make a team of just, these new Japanese players based off potential. I think maybe you pick one or two, maybe a pitcher and a hitter if you're drafting and they're just there to draft. But I wouldn't go crazy. I wouldn't build a team of them. But if they end up working out, then it's a steal because you're going to get a real good deal on any of them.
Dude, I think out of all the overseas signings to this point, I think this is the best one by far. I don't even think it's a question on how good of a signing this is for Houston. I think you're right. I think this is the replacement for Framber. I don't think Framber's coming back. I think he's going to go somewhere else. And just based off of the noise, I haven't heard anything about him, which is, I think, not good for him. I don't think his market is as big as he thought it was going to be going into free agency at this point. Yeah. But back to Armenia. Dude, I put a little Italian accent to it, Armenia. So he's he looks pretty good, Doug. I think he's got over a 95-mile fastball. He's got some junk that comes with it. Obviously, doing it in the KBO versus MLB is always going to be that next question of, is he going to make that jump right? I think the ceiling of this guy could be like a Shota in his rookie year, where he really was, very, very good. 16, 17 game winner. Had the strikeouts to support it, but also played for a pretty good ball team as well. So I think Houston is going to be competitive just as they always are. And I think this guy here kind of fits the mold for him as that replacement. Like you said, now you have him, you have Hunter Brown as kind of like their 1-2 punch. I think that's going to be a successful signing.
If they don't get a Framber Valdez, you still like that rotation? You're going to go out there with Lance McCullers again?
They need one more arm, and I'm not saying they have to get a number 2 guy. I'm just saying they need a guy that can eat innings. That's what they need, because right now it's a thin rotation. I think they just need another arm where they can just eat up innings and just make sure that these guys are staying healthy at the same time too, in the top end of their rotation. But yeah, they could probably use another arm. We'll just leave it at that.
I'll say this. I think you know what you get with Hunter Brown. I think when he's going, he's one of the better pitchers. He might not be a tier 1, but he's a tier 1B. That makes sense.
Yep.
But I still think, I like the signing, but there's so many question marks. If you're not going out and you're not going to sign another decent to sub decent or better pitcher, and if something happens and he doesn't perform, it's going to be a long, long season in Houston. Let me tell you. So if you're not signing anybody else and this is the rotation you're rolling with and you're kind of putting all your eggs in a basket, hopefully they don't crack, because, I think he will be successful, but there will also be a learning curve, and how big that curve is, I can't tell you. I still think they need a really good pitcher to be competitive. They need another pitcher, a good pitcher, because I just don't know what you're getting with him. You really don't, man. It's tough. It's really tough. I really don't know.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm hoping. Like I said, they're gonna have to make some. They're gonna have to make a move, I think, for a pitcher. I do like what they have in their offense. I think their offense is actually pretty above average. I think Cam Smith's gonna make a turnaround from his rookie year. I think there's a lot of potential there. Who else they got? I did see they went out and got a Jesus Sanchez from Miami.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a low key move, but obviously for him coming into the league a few years ago, there was a lot of high expectations to have him kind of be like a Jordan Alvarez type player. So I'll be kind of curious to see what they do with him in that lineup. I'm sure he's going to be a selected guy. And I also expect Christian Walker to have a bounce back year from what his previous year was. He started hitting a little bit in the second half toward the end of the year, but it was very, very minor. I don't know what the curse is over there at first base when it comes to Houston between him and Jose Abreu for a few years. It's dicey, but I do expect the bounce back. So yeah, but they're just gonna have to pull the trigger and find a guy like a Merrill Kelly, like pitcher to fill that void.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see somebody a little better. You know what kind of makes sense, and this could be crazy. Maybe Zach Gallen.
Zach Gallen.
Maybe sign him to kind of like a little prove it deal, and see what happens. You could probably get him for a good 2-year deal. 2-year, $40 million, just to test the waters. Could be a good deal for both. It'll show the rest of baseball if Gallen is still the guy that he was, right? I don't know. That kind of makes sense for me. I mean, Gallen's not going to be the one. He might not even be the 2. He'll probably be a 3 in this. I think you roll Hunter Brown out as your 1, personally, just because. I mean, you know what you're doing with him. He's got the innings. I think you roll him out as your ace. Amali is your 2, and then maybe Gallen's your 3, and then who knows? I mean, God, who else do they have? Lance McCullers. He'll probably be in the IL. I know they have a couple other guys, but
yeah,
Luis Garcia. But I don't know. I mean, a Gallen kind of makes sense if I do have to kind of pick up free agent to throw in there.
I'm looking at it right now. It's Hunter Brown, Emmy, and then you got Christian Javier, Spencer Arrighetti.
Javier was the one I was thinking.
Ryan Weiss, I guess they came on board, and then Mike Burrows came on as well. And then you also got Lance McCullers. And then they have a back end now. It looks like Jason Alexander, Colton Gordon, Nate Pearson, JP France. Like, they got a lot of new faces in that pitching room, it looks like, as well. Really the only names are Arrighetti, Javier, and Brown. You can say McCullers, but like you said, he's probably going to be dumpster anyway. So we're not even going to speak of that. But it's a lot of new faces in that pitching room where they really revamped it. So it's hard to get a pulse on what it's going to look like throughout the season.
Right. No, I think that's another reason why it just makes more sense to sign a Gallen. I mean, half the people you listed on there, I mean, haven't even played a full year last year, Yeah. Javier was hurt. You had McCullers that was hurt. None of these guys are going to give you a full workload. So why not go out and get a Gallen and see what happens? I don't know. Sometimes the moves that make the most sense are the ones that don't get done.
Yep. That's
like
life.
A fortune cookie, right? It'll be interesting. I mean, like you said, there's still a couple more months left. We'll see what happens. We'll see. Here's another fun one, and we're talking about Toronto. So after already signing Dylan Cease to a larger-than-life contract, in my opinion, where he is not worth the money, they now sign a 29-year-old Japanese third baseman, Kazuma Okamoto. I like that. 4 years, $60 million deal. So Okamoto, he's got 248 career home runs. He's hit 27 or more every season since 2018. Imagine that. His other career numbers include a 277 average, which has actually gone up the last 2 years. He hit 327 last year, 280 the year prior. His strikeout rate went down to 11%, and he's hit a total of 717 ribbies on his career. So 717 ribbies and 248 home runs. I think he's a solid addition. He can play second, he can play first, very similar to some of the other players we were talking about earlier. I mean, this tells me that they might be out of the Bo Bichette talks. This is a backup plan. And honestly, I think this, if they are, they save themselves a ton of money in the process. Everyone seems to forget the horrible year Bo Bichette had 2 years ago. I'm not sold on him, especially for 6 to 7 years. I think this addition makes sense. A lot of people say it's a backup plan. I think it's the plan, especially if they get a Tucker. There is no need to get a Bo Bichette anymore. You have Okamoto. I think it's a great signing. It'll be interesting to see what they do. The lineup, I'll show it to you now. Looks good. I mean, you take a look. You got, you have Kirk, Vlad, Clement, Jimenez, Okamoto at third, Santander, Varsho, Addison, Barger, and George Springer. But I still think you're still a guy away. So I think they still need to go out and they need to get a Tucker, or I don't know, maybe, dare I say, even try to get a Bregman and maybe do something different with Okamoto and move him to second, and maybe Clement can be a bat off the bench. I mean, it's there. You can do a lot of different things, but I think it's a great signing. 250 home runs for what they got, and even if he only hits a fraction of what he did, it's still a steal, in my opinion. I think it's a great signing. We'll see what happens and what they do, but yeah, I don't mind it. I think the whole Bo Bichette thing, they're out of that. I really do think this tells me that they're out of it, especially the money he wants. There's a reason why he hasn't signed yet, because he doesn't get what he wants, right? So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. That's like the theme. I feel like I keep saying it's going to be interesting. The entire show is going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to see where he ends up. But I think the Bo Bichette and Toronto tour is over. I really do. I really, really do.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, just looking at this lineup, it looks full, right? It looks like a full major league lineup. And the nice thing with Okamoto is he's flexible. He can play first, he can play third, he can play outfield. So there's versatility there with him when it comes to that. I mean, 4 years for 60 is crazy cheap for a guy that has that potential to be batting, potentially 270, 280 with 30 home runs and 80 or 90 RBIs to go with it. That's pretty damn good to me. And then also just kind of looking at his strikeouts and stuff too, he's a sub 1 game. So I'm looking at 100 strikeouts per 150 games, which is, I think about below league average, from a fantasy perspective. That's really good. So he should be targeted. I'm not saying very high, but I'm not saying like top 3 rounds, top 4 rounds. But if you said you snuck him in the 5th round and you play him in the top 50, I don't think I'm going to bat an eye. What do you think? Do you think that's an overreaction, especially for a guy that hasn't played maybe MLB games yet?
Maybe 5 or 6. I think it all depends what position they're going to put him at. If they do make him a third baseman, I would say probably 6th. 6th. A lot of people, like I said, they're probably going to be resentful in drafting someone that early that's coming from a whole different league, because you don't know what you're getting. But like you said, I mean, the numbers, guy hit 316 last year. I mean, the home runs are there. The strikeouts aren't there. Like he has everything a team would want in a player. I mean, where do you bat him in this lineup? That's another question, and you got Anthony Santander in there, and oh my God, that, who knows what he's going to do next year?
Yeah,
but I think it's good. I still think they're a piece away. I mean, I could totally understand if they run this out, and this is This is still a major league lineup. I think it's still good enough to, with what they have done with their pitching rotation, this should still get them the East again, if not the second over the wild card. This will get them into the playoffs, regardless of what they do. Just based off of addressing the needs in the rotation, upgrading third base. This will get them there. The difference between them getting a wild card spot and winning the East is Kyle Tucker. That's the difference, in my opinion. I don't know. I still think the Yankees are the team to beat just because Garrett Cole is going to be coming back. And that's going to be a really good rotation. And if they get Ballinger back, but they have a lot of holes too. Now that I think about it, it's like, okay, Goldie's gone. So you got Ben Rice that's probably going to play first.
Yeah.
Ballinger's gone. So Jason Dominguez will probably be starting, right? DH will be Stanton. Volpe's not playing short. He's hurt. He's coming back a couple months after, or maybe mid-year. That's you know what? Now that I think about it, I might just go Blue Jays for the division.
I think Blue Jays are number one still.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Baltimore's number 2, just based off of healthy lineups. Don't get me wrong. I think the Yankees probably have the best rotation when Cole comes back, because you go Cole, Fried, Rondon. I mean, that's a really good 1, 2, 3. No matter how you split it. I mean, those guys. You have 3 guys that could be potential top 25 starting pitchers in a fantasy format. You have 3 of them in one team.
Yeah.
You that's the best rotation in the American League. But offensively is where they're going to hurt. It's just how it is now that I look at it. And if they don't go out and they don't get at least a Ballinger or and trade for somebody else for, I don't know. I mean, a Bo Bichette makes sense for the Yankees. I'll tell you that. Have him play short, and then when Volpe comes back, you move him to second. Jazz is playing outfield. I even read they might even trade Jazz because he's on the last year of his contract. So who knows what they're going to do? But right as of now, this is the team to be in the American League East. I've said it.
Yeah. It's official. That rotation, I think, is very good still. I think the offense is the best in the AL East. And I don't think they're going anywhere. They're hungry. They almost had it last year. 7 games. They're an inch away. Inch away. That's how much. It was that close. They were that close. And I think they're hungry for more. I don't think they're going anywhere. And I think the Yankees going to be scared about them too. And if they, when they play each other, I hope, from a baseball perspective and a baseball fan, I hope those 2 teams hate each other because they both know who they're going after. They're going after each other. They should know that. They should really, really draw the line. I think Aaron Boone, I wouldn't be surprised if he starts throwing at those guys, especially earlier in the season, being like, hey, guess what? We're not going anywhere. We're still here. We're still the Yankees. I think that's their biggest edge is if they can set the tone. They can really do something, I think, in the division, but it's tough. I'll
really tell you this much though: if that does happen and that rivalry is there, I'm happy. I'm Baltimore. I'm just gonna shut up and keep winning games, and I'm gonna sneak in. And I'm telling you, man, they made the right moves. They really did. I think make the right moves. They really did. They could still use a decent arm, but at the end of the day, I mean, they made the adjustments they needed to make. You go out, you get a Pete Alonso, you get the big bat you needed. That'll replace the 40 home runs from a couple of years ago where you were successful when Anthony Santander was in that lineup. And now you got Gunnar Henderson who should be back healthy. Now you can move Adley into the 2 hole and he's not that in cleanup anymore. And they made the right moves. They really did. As far as a complete team, you can't get any better than that. Their rotation should be pretty solid. Yeah, you got Baz. You also got what's his face who pitched really good, who just got back from Tommy John last year. What's his name? Bradish.
Bradish, yeah.
So you still got him as your, so it's really not a bad team. It's going to be fun to see the East. I think it's up for grabs. I think right now it's just a 3-team race. The Red Sox go out and they sign a couple players. Now we're talking 4s, but as of now, it's a 3-team race in the East.
I think so too. Sox are just, You know, going back to the Sox, it's just really tough to put a pulse on them and what they're going to do. They're really relying on their young guys to make that next step and making a humongous impact. And I think that's a humongous ask from those guys. You know, Marcel Mayer is a good player. Obviously, Robert Anthony, we're very excited about. But I think they're asking from a lot for those guys early on. And like you said, against these juggernaut teams, rotations that they're going to have to go against, it's not going to be an easy task. So they're going to need some more support.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to one of the last signings that I have. Well, actually, it wasn't even a signing; it was a trade. Which another one. I thought this one made complete sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
Take a look. So the Chicago Cubs, the Cubbies, they made a move Wednesday to kind of shore up their starting rotation. You know, they traded outfield prospect Owen Cassie and 2 other hitting prospects for the to the Miami Marlins. For Edward Cabrera. Cabrera, great season last year, 8-7, only 137 innings pitched, but 150 strikeouts, 48 walks, a 3.5 ERA, 242 points, 9.3 a start. The innings were a career high. The upside could be huge, but there is also injury risk. I think the Cubs should up his value. I think signing with the Cubs in a fantasy perspective should probably up his value. You know, he's going to a very competitive he went from a competitive NL East to a little easier NL Central. So I think it's going to be a better move for him and for fantasy. I think the rotation now is something that you can look at and say, okay, this is a rotation that is set up for success. And, you know, here it is right here, you know, and it's not even everybody, you know. So you have a rotation. You got Justin Steele, who's coming back. You have Shota, who's, you know, started out hot, got hurt, came back, and started getting hit around pretty hard. But they kind of pretty much just restructured his contract, and he'll be back. And you know what he's capable of. You know, people say he was tipping his pitches, and that was the reason why he got hit so hard the second half. We'll see. Hopefully he's fixed the issue. But now you got Edward Cabrera, you got Jameson Italian, Matthew Boyd, Kate Horton. It's a pretty decent rotation. I think they're good here. I think now you move on and you try to address your offense. You know, you lost to Kyle Tucker. PCA tanked in the second half. You need a couple bats, in my opinion. I think you need a pretty big bat. You need a power bat for sure because you don't have one. You know, say it goes out and you know, he had a pretty good year, 30-something home runs. Also had almost 180 strikeouts doing it. Not a high average. He was a hit or miss player. You need a couple pretty big bats, unfortunately. So, you know, Michael Busch, like these guys aren't the guys. You know, Michael Busch, PCA, you know, they're just not the guys. Ian Happ, you need more than just a ducker. That's what that showed you last year. Right? So, who knows what they're going to do? I hope they go out and they get a couple big bats. I don't think they will. They'll probably get one, which is better than none, but, you know, still a great rotation, you know, Justin Steele and getting Cabrera, and it looks good. You know, I think Steele's your one. I think you could go Shota or Cabrera 2-3. There's flexibility there. Horton is good. I mean, yeah, it's got depth and it's got starting pitching depth, which is different between regular depth. So I like it. I think it's a good move. I really do.
Yeah, it is. It's a great move. I think he needed a new location anyway to get out of Miami just so he could hit more of his potential, I think. We both know he has the stuff. He just needs to put it together. And maybe Chicago's the right place for it. And then especially earlier in the season, you know, that's a tough ballpark to play in if you're a hitter. So that could be also a good advantage for him. Obviously, has some good breaking ball stuff. We know that the grass is a little bit thicker in Chicago. So it's a good place for a ground ball pitcher, for, you know, a Cabrera who's a power pitcher. So it's kind of a good fit. And like you said, Doug, like it's a depth rotation. It's Justin Steele's going to come back. Shota should be bouncing back from the season that he just had that was injury riddled. Kate Horton, I mean, he had a fantastic rookie season. Hopefully he can bounce back more on that. He's going to be, I think, on a lot of people's radars as well as like a nice little late pick, you know, and the expectation should be
about 150, 160 innings. Still a young guy, still building up the innings. But he could be very good because I think Chicago, like you said, very non-competitive division. You win a lot of baseball games. So obviously, if you're in a points league and you get wins, Kate Orton might be getting a couple extra wins if they can really put the offense together. Like you said, they need to sign a couple bats, big time. But I don't know. Time's running out.
It is. It is. I mean, it's not a bad problem to have when all you really need is just bats at this point. When your rotation's kind of locked in, it's nice. You know, I would wish the Red Sox had that problem where, you know what, we have a rotation now. All we really need to focus on is getting bats. Either we trade for some or we sign some. But yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, from what I've heard, they did reach out to Bregman. I don't think they're in that anymore, though.
Yeah,
I feel like they're not going to do anything. I really don't. I think they're going to just stand pat and say, hey, let's see if PCA can build off his first half, which second half was horrible. You know, you can't like deny, like, you know what I mean? It's like you can't look at it and say, oh yeah, let's build off your first half, but you're not going to have Tucker in that lineup anymore either. So
no, you're relying on guys like Matt Shaw to step up. You know, coming from what was that, Houston? He was part of the Houston trade.
Yeah.
So you expect him to step up this coming year. And I mean, man, you know, like you said, PCA. I'm not trusting PCA yet. I saw that second half. I saw those strikeouts. That's what I was worried about going into the season. So you're asking for a lot from a guy that hasn't done it full season yet. So, you know, again, there's not a lot of guys out there in free agency that you can start bringing back on that they can fill voids for. Like you said, they have Michael Bush, which is okay. But, you know, here's a weird question to ask you, random. Who would you rather have, Michael Bush or Luis Arias?
Oh, that's tough.
You know, that's a guy that is out there still.
He is. Nobody's talking about him, man. This is a guy who hit over 300 the last couple of years. What did he have, like 30 strikeouts in an entire year? He was healthy.
He had a bad season last year, you know, to standard, but that was one season.
Yeah. I don't it's interesting. I don't know, man.
See, I don't like, you know, these teams, just the theme of the night. They got to get creative with how they're going to bring in bats and where they're going to place them. And now that you're going into January, now we're only maybe 4 weeks away from, you know, pitchers and catchers starting to report.
Yeah,
we're right around the corner. So these guys they're gonna have homes soon. They got gaps. They got a lot of gaps.
And, you know, here are some of the top free agents that are still out there. You know, we talked Tucker. You got Framber Valdez. You got Ranger Suarez.
Yes.
That's a fun one. You Bellinger, Bregman, and Bo Bichette. So, I don't know. You want to start, like, I think I would love to see Framber go to the Mets. I think that's a good spot for him. I think that's actually where he's going to go. Like, I'm not sitting there predicting, like saying I would like to see him there. I think he's really going to go to the Mets. I think he's going to go to the Mets. And honestly, I would not be surprised if Ranger Suarez goes to the Mets. Like, if I'm Steve Cohen, I'm going all in. Like, your offense is set, man. You're good to go. I think you made the right moves. Like, you have an all-star team offense. Now you need a rotation. You know, Sean Manaea is not the guy. You go out, you got the Japanese prospect in there. Now, let's get some real, you know, some really good pitching talent. And you go out and you get a Valdez and Suarez, and boom, you're done. That's it. You're done, I think. If anything, he's probably going to get one of them. Maybe not both. That's probably being optimistic. But I think they are going to sign one of them. They really are. I don't know which one. Obviously, I think I'd rather get Valdez, but, you know, I can understand both. I mean, you know, I don't know. Who do you like better? What do you think the Mets are going to do?
I think the Mets need to land one of these guys. I think it's very important for them to establish their rotation again.
We talked about it last time we were on air. I do love Noah McClain going into this year. I think he's going to be a stud. And I think they are going to rely on him to be, part of that 1-2 punch with whoever else that they bring in, whether it's Scooble in a trade or signing one of these guys. But they need another guy, and they need another top guy. I think Valdez, is more of a fit for the Mets than a range of Suarez. Valdez has kind of been there, done that, eat those innings. He knows to go deep into games. If you need that complete game, he can do that for you at times. We just haven't really seen it consistently with Suarez until these past maybe year and a half or so that he's had. But yeah, I think Suarez, I don't think he's going to go back to the Phillies. I think the Phillies are going to give Andrew Painter a fair shot in that rotation this year. So I do think they're willing to let go of a guy like Suarez to give a guy like Painter a chance. But a Suarez, I can see going to maybe like a Texas, a Houston, like you said. You talk about Zach Gallen potentially. A range of Suarez would also fit that bill. And then, a little bit more outlierish, but they could use some rotation help is also San Francisco. I think San Francisco could use another guy in that rotation because I think they're going to be as competitive as they were last year. Hopefully.
Yeah. Honestly, you make a good point. If the Mets end up going out and trade for a Scooble, which, who knows what's going to happen. But if they do, then I think that, like you said, they only need to sign one of these guys. They only sign them both.
Yep.
It's all going to be dependent on the dominoes, how they fall, when they fall, and where they fall. But I'm hoping they do make a splash. I like the Mets. Always have been a Mets guy. I think the lineup is probably one of the best. If there's ever a lineup that can probably go head to head with the Dodgers, you could make the case it's the Mets. You have the best shortstop. You go talent by talent. It's one obviously Ohtani, but then you look at you got shortstop. I'll take Lindor over Mookie Betts personally. I think Lindor is a better shortstop. I think offensively, guy's a 30-30 guy almost 2 years in a row. You give me that. I'll take that.
Agree with that.
Outfield, no one's better than Soto,
Yep.
DH, obviously Ohtani, first base. Yeah, well, you can go Freddie for now, unless, something happens. But it's, if they go out and they get a Scooble and then they get a Valdez or Suarez, if I'm the Dodgers, man, you watch out. They're going to make noise. They really are.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, Philly was maybe the most competitive team. We thought that they were going to be really competitive with the Dodgers. And Milwaukee had obviously a fantastic season last year. And they're hoping to rebound back on that again, having the best record in the major leagues. It's kind of slept on a little bit. But they're expected to be just right back up there with the Dodger team, competing against them. So I still see the Dodgers still winning though. Like I said, they have the next decade of existence here, and they're just not going to go anywhere. Everyone's going to be chasing the dragon until someone beats them. No one's done it yet. It's been 2 years now. Everything's going to plan in LA. It's been too perfect.
But now I think you're starting to see turnover. Freddie Freeman's getting old. He's not performing. A lot of stuff I've seen is a lot of people were like, oh, well, they're going to trade Freddie Freeman for this and that. So they're already looking to dump Freddie, right? Mookie Betts is getting older. He's in his 30s, early 30s, I think, right? I think he's 29.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even older. It might be 32. So the turnover is going to hit. It's just a matter of replacing it. And, Teoscar Hernandez is in his 30s. It's getting old. It's an old lineup for sure. The staff is good. I think the rotation is good for the next 5 years. You could probably go out with that rotation. But offensively, those bats are getting old, and you're going to replace them. And, if the turnover goes the way it's supposed to go, then, yeah, this is a team that could be competitive in the World Series team, could win the next 10 years in a row. But it's all about just making sure they do the right replacements for some of these guys. So, I don't know what's going to happen. Freddie Freeman last year was didn't really do it, man. I think at this point, him, Harper, like those guys are just names. They're names, and if you get them late, that's cool. But I'm not reaching for any of those guys. They're old, and now they're hitting the IL and nowhere near the performance they were putting up. So why am I going to go out and reach for them? But people still are. I mean, I don't think Freddie is a top two, a second round pick anymore. And I bet you someone's going to draft him in the second round.
Just how it goes. I just looked it up. He's 33. He just turned 33, so he's got a couple more years of prime, but he's not a young buck anymore, right? Like you said, the turnaround's starting to happen there. Very, very interesting. I think Mookie's still a top guy, but I don't think second round is where you get him. Maybe third or fourth. I got to start cracking down on these drafts now. That the New Year's here. So I got to get into the flow because I think you're right. Some people just name chase. We talk about how thin first base is, but if you see a name that you like, they're gonna maybe go up on that list a little bit sooner. And we saw it last year's draft, where Harper went versus a couple other guys that we talked about, like Naylor and Vinny P. And, both those guys finished ahead of Harper. So, you got to take the name out of it sometimes and just look at the number.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, first base is pretty thin, so I could understand why some of these people are going to reach for those guys. I still think if Tucker ends up signing with the Blue Jays, Vladimir Guerrero is your number one pick, your number one first baseman. He's got to be number one, just because what Tucker brings to that lineup now. You got to go him. Even though Pete Alonso finished third, I still don't see that. I think he's maybe a top five, like fifth. He just tanked so hard in the second half last year. It's tough to say, all right, he's going to be another big time bat. I'm sold on Naylor being a top five. I really am. I think he's going to be a top five. He showed me the last 2 months in Seattle that he can hit there and he can be a successful hitter there. So that there's nothing that doesn't surprise me there. But everybody else, it's after that, it's the field's kind of wide open, man. It's like, who are you going to really take your chance on? Like, I'm not taking a chance on Alonso. I might take a chance on Freddie, but that's if he's there in like the end of the third. I think Harper might go before Freddie for some weird reason. People like Harper more just because of the home run potential, but he's always hurt more. I mean, there's a lot of give and take with some of these guys too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think Naylor's going to go under the radar. I think you're going to get a really good deal on him because a lot of people just, you'll see Freddie, you'll see Harper go before him. I just feel it. Even though they shouldn't, they will because of, like you said, the name recognition's there.
It's the name recognition, and I think all those guys that you just mentioned too, they're going to get drafted around the same time. I can already picture the draft board. I can already see these names clumped together, and then it becomes just a preference on who you want at that point. And like you said, I think that's going to be the first wave, and then the second wave begins with like the Josh Naylor, and then the Vinny P, and then I don't know what draft boards look like yet or anything, but you can't sleep on Cody Bellinger as well if he still has that first base eligibility. He was one of the top first basemen, if not the top first baseman in a lot of leagues. So where does he fit into that mold? Does he get drafted more in like a late second round or early third round instead of maybe that fourth or fifth round or sixth round in some leagues that you might have drafted him in last year because of that prove it deal that he just had? So and also it's so early. It's only January 9th. We don't know where some of these guys are going yet. We don't even know where they're going. So speaking of which, Cody Bellinger, Doug, where do you think he's going? Do you think he's going back to the Yankees, or are you taking the field?
I think he's going back to the Yankees, and now that Paul Goldschmidt is not under contract anymore, I think he's going to play first base.
Yep.
And then Ben Rice can go out. Ben Rice does play outfield. You can always move him back to outfield. He does catch. Could be a catcher. He's very versatile. So you can do a lot of things with him. But I think with Goldie not there, Bellinger at first, it just makes the most sense. To me, it makes the most sense. I don't see him going anywhere else, really. I couldn't. Like, I think he wants to play first base. I think he's sick of playing the outfield. And so I just feel like the Yankees are going to get him and he's going to play first base.
Yeah, best move for him. Already had the success. We talked about Kyle Schwarber going back to Philly. That's where he's going to be the best. I think same thing for Bellinger too.
Yeah, I mean, I really can't see him anywhere else. Maybe he can go back to the Cubs. He wasn't bad there. You know, maybe they come in and they say, you know, offer him some crazy contract, but there's really nowhere else I could see him go. Nowhere. Like I'm trying to think, like, you know, the Guardians need somebody, but I don't think he'd ever go. Like, he doesn't. Like, I can't picture him in a Guardians uniform. You know,
does he go back
I can't picture him in a
Dodgers?
A Dodger uniform. No, I think he's done that experiment. No. And then, you know, maybe Houston. Would that
maybe Houston?
You know, they need an outfield. They lost Tucker. They still want another bat in front of Jordan. Why not go out and get a Cody Bellinger? There's not a lot of teams that kind of make it fit. I really can't think of many where he would fit. I know there's a lot of teams that need him, but as far as teams that I think where I could see him wear their uniform, there's only like 2 or 3.
Yeah, there's only a handful, if that. I don't even know if there's even a handful. I think you're right. I don't think there's that many. But again, I go back to that Toronto team. That's just the theme of the day. If Burrows is not lying, does that mean they're also on in Cody Bellinger? You know, a guy that has some flexibility. Obviously, Vlad plays first, but you know, you could change him to DH if you really wanted to, if you wanted to save it. I don't know. I think there's options out there for him.
Yeah, I mean, you pull up the Blue Jays. We looked at their lineup, and it just, again, it's like it's complete now. You know, if you do end up getting a Bellinger, like you said, I think you're going to be rotating a lot. You know, you're going to be rotating DH, first base, maybe even outfield. Who knows? Maybe Sandier. You know, he was a DH permanently with Orioles, right? Maybe they take him out, they put him in DH, and Bellinger plays the outfield. So I feel like if he does sign there, it's just constantly juggling players and players over and over. And like that, at some point, he'll probably say to himself, why did I sign up for this? If I'm getting moved around way too much, where I could have probably just signed with the Yankees and just stayed at first. You know,
very true.
But we still got a couple months away. You know, we got to put a couple feelers out for the Bourbon League again. We want to do our Bourbon and Ball League again this year. I already got a couple players that were interested, so we're looking for 10. I'll put a thing out for that. We can do the draft on air again. That'll be fun. First place will get a bottle of bourbon, and if I win, whoever gets second will get some bourbon glasses as a runner-up prize. Not too bad.
Can't go wrong with that. Can't go wrong.
So, all right, man, I got to play this outro. It's like 2 minutes long, so it might put us over. So, all right, guys, we're going to see you maybe next month, the beginning of February, maybe 3 weeks. I will be away, but until then, have fun, be safe, finish your drink and go to bed.
Life is like a duck. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. Here at Military Broadcast Radio, we're teaming up with our friends at Die Tired, the veteran-friendly music band spreading strength, resilience, and mental health awareness one shirt at a time.
And check this out. Their brand new shirts feature broadcast beaker right on the breast pocket. A reminder that you can weather the storm, and you're never alone.
Shirts are only $25, and proceeds support giving veterans a voice. MBR's mission to teach veterans how to podcast and videocast. Because when our vets are talking, they're not overthinking. They're not second-guessing. Together, we stop the 22 stigma. Grab your shirt today at mbradio.us and hit the shop. Or go directly to toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband. That's toramerch.printavo.com/merch/dietiredband.
Suit up, stand strong.
Remember, we're unduckable together.
You're built tougher than the storm.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget.